you all as disruptors, people who are educators and counselors and leaders in our faith-based communities, in our education settings, people who are advocates and activists, and who are passionate about wanting to see inclusion, and know that there are things that we can do and should do. So you should be excited to see so many others who are like you, who are here, and know that there were many. I was getting emails until like 5 minutes ago. Is there still room to attend? So first off, just thank you for showing up. It really helps, like all of us, I think, when we can see that we're not alone in this journey and our efforts. Again, I'm Dr. Deetra Hawkins, and one of the things that I wanted to share today is that it's really important that we think about getting grounded in our purpose, that we take time to practice, and that we learn how to ask questions that move us in the direction of possibility. I am a trained clinical psychologist, and one of those things that I have learned over and over again is that what people really want is to be heard and believed. And so that is so important when we start talking about microaggressions. We talk about the intervention and the microaffirmations. And today, I'm really just going to give you like information. We're going to try and use some polls. We will not have a chance to do like breakout rooms and conversations. And that is where the next magic usually happens. But to start off with, I want to invite us all to take a deep breath. It's important to breathe. Because the other thing about microaggressions, invalidations, and the conversations that we want to talk about today is that when you start the conversation, it just can flood, right? Like it can just create this flood. And it's important that we practice breathing and getting connected and grounded into our bodies. So we just want to pay attention to that. Okay, thank you all for that. So our objectives are to start thinking about the intricacies, because all of these issues are intersectional. It's not just talking about race and ethnicity, and it's not just talking about economics. It's really talking about how all of these things come together. And personally, I got into really understanding microaggressions from a place of looking at our health, of looking at how creating a program at this time, this is many years ago, that we brought a group of African-American men together to talk about what was going on in life. And it helped them be able to come down off blood pressure medicine. So, there's something about that we just need to recognize. There are many impacts when it comes to microaggressions. There's also a lot of things that we can do to actually intervene, and practices that we can start to implement and institutionalize in order to start making progress and see that we are not just continuing to experience microaggressions. Want to invite my team to wave and say hello. So one of the things I say all the time is do not do this work by yourself. Have a team, bring others with you. So Elizabeth and Tony will be helping us out in just a little bit. And you will hear from them on a couple of things. So I always start off by sharing my basic tenets, our basic tenets and how we work. I won't go over all of these, but I do want to highlight that we know this work is messy. And one of the skills is to be able to not only say ouch, but to, when someone says ouch, to respond, to get off of someone's toe. And that today, when we think about microaggressions, microinterventions, microaffirmations, one of the first things we can start thinking about is that we all have a role to play. So whether you are a victim of a microaggression, an insult, all of those things, if you are a witness, if you find out and someone calls you in and says that you have done something that has been painful, we all have a role to play. And so in that, shame doesn't help all that much. Okay, so my goal is to not create a lot of shame and blame. I really want us to find small ways in which we can intervene, and we can notice and recognize that we can be brave and be those disruptors, okay? So we always like to start off with a poll, and I'm going to talk through some of this. One is to just get an idea, who here feels like they can explain how critical race theory was originated? Who here has ever taken the ACEs test? Do you know what it is? This should be an easy one. Who's read fiction lately? Okay. We ask questions about like fiction and what you're reading, because when we can have stretch into possibilities, when we can imagine, it actually creates room, especially when we're in stark places, to be able to move toward what's possible. Love to know if anyone here has or could give an example of weathering. I can see already that some people are like, I got it, and some are like, not so sure. Okay, that's great. Important question, have you witnessed a microaggression in the last month? Have you been the recipient of a microaggression? And how excited are you to be here today? Okay. Then our last question is, have you taken the implicit association test? Wonderful here. And the how excited is multiple choice. So you could be all of them, right? You're very excited, you're good, and you're eager to learn. Like it could be like all of those different things. And I always like to ask people if they have taken the implicit association test, which is just one way for us to have a sense personally of what are the tapes that we have inside of our heads. They're not necessarily the things that we believe, but it's what you've been exposed to. And the exciting thing about that, and we can send a link out to you if you have not taken it, is that it gives you an opportunity to even explore what are some of the stereotypes that are in other countries, not just here in the US, but also what are some of the images that we've just been embedded by and that kind of sit with us. And these are just ways to understand where we are. Okay, so I'm gonna let that continue to go a little bit longer because we haven't, oh, did we stop the test, the poll? Oh, all right, well, we only had number, not everybody. Okay, so you're seeing the results. So, this is kind of what we're expecting right now. Like most of us have heard about critical race theory, or probably don't know about the origination of it. Love if you were to put in chat if you're interested in learning more about that. We actually just did a dinner in with our group in Cleveland talking about critical race theory. So that would be to bring to you. We have some people who have taken the ACEs study, and one of the things that we want to talk about, or I want to acknowledge, is that trauma. So ACEs is helping us understand the experience of adverse childhood, trauma, those experiences that lead into and now we know have great impact on our health as adults. Okay, we've got some people who have read some fiction, which is great. Some haven't. We can make some recommendations if you're curious. And we will also be, today talking about, so let me take a moment and just say that when we think about microaggressions, and we're going to show a video in a moment to help unpack that a little bit more. A good way to think about microaggressions is the way weather happens. So if you imagine a drop of water on a rock over and over and over and over again, it can crack the rock. It's very powerful, even though it seems small. And unfortunately, the thing that tends to happen is that we hear the word micro and we don't see the impact. Mothering, I think, is a better imagery for what a microaggression does. Okay. We'll come back to that a little bit in a moment. So another image that we can use to think about microaggressions is this little clip, which will, I think, do a nice job of helping us get started, because someone in chat just said, can you unpack what is a microaggression? Well, let's start there. All right, Elizabeth?
Still don't think that microaggressions are a problem?
Oh, you're so well spoken.
Just imagine, instead of being a stupid comment, a microaggression is a mosquito bite.
Ugh, it's a compliment.
Mosquito bites and their itch are one of nature's most annoying features. But if you're only bitten every once in a while...
No, where are you really from?
Cleveland?
Sure, it's annoying, but it's not that big a deal. The problem is that some people get bitten by mosquitoes a lot more than other people. I mean, a lot more. Whether it's on a date...
Oh, your English is so good.
Excuse me?
Going grocery shopping...
You know, everything happens for a reason.
I'm just buying apples.
Commuting to work...
So when are you gonna have a baby?
Watching TV...
We have to keep the Redskins' name. It's part of our culture and history.
Or just walking down the street with your partner.
I couldn't even tell you were gay.
Mosquitoes seem to pop up everywhere.
Do you know John? Give me shopping advice. I love Cher too.
And getting bit by mosquitoes every day,
Can I touch your hair?
multiple times a day,
So pretty. Can
Can
I
I
touch
touch
your
it,
hair?
please? I want to touch it. Can I please?
is annoying. And makes you want to go ballistic on those mosquitoes, which seems like a huge overreaction to people who only get bit every once in a while.
It's just a mosquito bite. Who cares?
Just another angry black woman.
Of course, beyond just being annoying, some mosquitoes carry truly threatening diseases that can mess up your life for years.
Astrophysics? Maybe you should try less challenging, Major.
Ow, my dreams.
And other mosquitoes carry strains that can even kill you.
It looked like he was up to trouble, okay? I felt threatened.
So next time you think someone's overreacting, just remember, some people experience mosquito bites all the time.
You're all so exotic. Wow.
And by mosquito bites, we mean microaggressions.
Imagery, analogies can often help us so much more when we're trying to explain what our lived experiences are like. So many different resources out there for helping us think about what a microaggression is, what the experience is, what we can do, and we want to not only talk about these different terms and invite you just to take a moment to sort of reflect on for yourself what's familiar here, what's not familiar. When we talk about microaggressions, we're talking about lots of different things, and so this is just a beginning list of all these different things. From insults to assaults, right? The small ways in which someone might move away from you. Had a recent experience of someone at church moving to another pew. Microinvalidation, I have bolded, because this is the space, especially for me as a psychologist, that I see happen in our field a lot, where we want to help someone feel better. And so we want to, our first response when someone shares a story is to say, oh, I'm sure they didn't really mean it that way. Okay. Which is really an invalidation. And an easy strategy, just want to have all of us be able to practice, is when someone shares a story with you, is to just say thank you. You don't need to fix it. You don't need to go in to, change it around, but thank them for trusting you enough to share that story. The positive work here is that we do have things called microaffirmations, and that, like a thank you, a nod, right? Looking at someone is very powerful. When someone is experiencing a microaggression or an insult, having another person, the witness, like give that I saw that too, visual is an affirmation. A way to talk about this can be, as I've already said, weathering, and that what we're learning is that we're really unpacking what could be called everyday racism, everyday discrimination, everyday oppression. And falling into those categories is starting to think about the role of bullying, because a lot of us have been taught how to address bias and discrimination and not bullying. When we're talking about bullying, we have to get much better at calling it out, naming it, noticing it, and saying that it's inappropriate. And when we think about discrimination, we know that there are intersectional ways in which that can show up. So I have a little image here and some recent work. What we're knowing is that the research is telling us that microaggressions and the experience of everyday oppression, it continues. For me, it's important to acknowledge, where did all this sort of work come from? And one of the people that's important to talk about is Dr. Chester Pierce, as he was trying to help people just name, what are those mosquito bites that are incessant, you know? It's not the direct experiences of discrimination, is the indirect experiences at times. But they have almost more of a negative impact, right? And they often go unacknowledged. I have found over the years that people just appreciate being able to have a word, just having a word. It doesn't mean that it needs to become part of HR policy as the word, as much as like the things that you do should become part of policy. Talking about discrimination, talking about opportunities to make change. And just in case you feel like you are being put on the spot, I want to make sure that you know that the research is there. We think about cancer research, we think about working across gender, when we think about international relationships. So, you know, here's a piece from Canada. If you want articles, it's out there. You can find all kinds of research and information related to microaggressions. So let me just take a moment to unpack this a little bit. So if you've experienced a microaggression, you may feel really angry. You may feel offended. You may even feel confused. You know, a number of people that experience a microaggression insult and they're left with, did that really just happen? Did they really just say that to me? You know, if you've committed a microaggression, then what you might notice is that you feel ashamed or defensive. And if you have witnessed a microaggression, there might be tension and sort of this avoidance of conflict. So what are some different kinds of microaggressions that are out here? This chart, which I know you probably can't see all that well, but you'll get the slides later. Here's the list. So there's been, again, some new research that is talking about people's experiences of microaggressions, and this is a common list of what people have been talking about. Being addressed in an unprofessional way, being told you're well-spoken, right? Being talked over, being asked about your dating life, being asked about your qualifications, hearing negative comments about your body. These are just a few, okay? So what we want to do is give an example of what can happen in an exchange. We're going to do a role play. This role play is based off of a conversation that Aiko, Bethia, and Brene Brown had, and we have edited to work sort of, you know, for our, in various different ways. So Tony and Elizabeth are going to help us out.
Thanks, Dr. Dietra. So Tony and I have prepared this role play, and there are going to be times where I'm going to pause and ask if you could add in chat if I am staying on the ramp in the conversation and engaging, or if I am sliding off the ramp. Okay, so we'll invite you to add some notes in chat. Tony, I've been so excited to hear about your presentation with the team. I know you've been working super hard on the slides. I've seen you at the office, late nights, really doing the research over the past couple months. I think the presentation was yesterday, right? How did it go?
Yeah. I've been working on the research for months, trying to dig into my own lived experience and the latest research, which is really difficult in this pandemic. Yeah, the final presentation was yesterday and it went fine.
Oh, Tony, that's great. I'm sure you just knocked it out of the park. You're terrific. Hey, I got to run to a meeting really quick, but let's catch up on this a little bit more later, okay? All right, I see somebody already. Caps off the ramp. Off. Okay, sliding. All right, let me try something else here. Tony, you said it was just fine. Can you share more about that?
Well, you know, Simon gave the presentation and the final slides didn't include some of the stories I'd suggested from my own lived experience in the community. I felt those stories gave life and meaning to the research, and that just surprised me.
Well, Tony, you know how Simon is. I mean, he doesn't do that touchy-feely stuff, and he's a great presenter. Plus, look, you've only been at the organization for a couple months. You really need to earn his trust before you can work, you know, and present. So I won't worry about it. Okay, I'm seeing a lot in chat here. Sliding off. Okay. All right, let me try a different approach. Tony, that sounds like something that really didn't feel good. I know how much of your heart and your time and your own stories you put into that work.
Yeah. When Simon and I talked before the meeting, when I turned in the draft slides, he told me that he'd direct any questions from the board to me and asked me to share the inspiration behind this project and provide additional context. But there wasn't any time left. I actually was never even introduced, nor did I have the opportunity to speak.
Wait a second. You never even got a chance to speak? That is unacceptable. Tony, I am going to march into Simon's office. I am going to call him out. I am going to rail on this. This is never going to happen with somebody on my team. I've got you. This is ridiculous. This is out of control. Don't worry about it. It will never happen again. Okay. I'm seeing a lot of good notes in the chat here. Let me try a different approach. Taking off my savior cape here. Tony, that's not okay. To have your research, your expertise, your lived experience be presented by somebody else and not even invited to present and not even acknowledged for all the work that you did. It's just not okay. I'm so sorry you were treated that way. I'm here if and when you decide you'd like to address this in some way with Simon or with the company at large. I'm here to support you in your leadership, to walk with you, and to speak up and act if you think that would be helpful.
Yeah, we could see in there again, Chad, so many of the pieces, right? So I love this, people acknowledging the ability to actively listen, how easy it is. I don't know if you picked up on for ourselves, like how easy it is to move into, well, they said it was fine, so let's move on. Or, oh, they said, you know how it is, so we're just gonna, you know, explain it away. So that invalidation that can happen over and over again. And then interrupting, oh, I'm gonna swoop in, we're gonna take something over. But how important just the practice of being able to really listen and like not decenter the person who we're actually trying to engage with is important. So wanted to give that very short example of what we can do and how we can stay on the ramp or stay in the conversation And also to give a little bit of an example of what ways that we think we're trying to be helpful that are actually not helpful, right? So let me share my screen again. Love the interaction, engagement in chat already. It's so good. Whoops, went too fast. So what I wanted to talk about are some things to be aware of. If you are a victim of this weathering of microaggressions, one of the first things that all of us need to be doing is breathing. Just getting centered in ourselves. I also want to encourage you to give it a name, to call it a microaggression, racism, discrimination, oppression, to notice and give it a name. If it landed in your body and if it doesn't feel good, you can name it. When you're ready, then weigh your options, right? Because it's not always safe when you are the victim of a microaggression to say anything at that time. A strategy that can be helpful for both yourself and for the person who has said something or done something that's offensive is to approach it with curiosity. It is often disarming. It disarms you to be curious, and it disarms the person, surprisingly, to be curious. Like, I wondered why you thought you could just touch my hair like that. And I want you to think about how you can identify allies and that we help our allies learn how to be better allies. So a lot of people struggle with allies, and I agree, we can have co-conspirators. Like we want it all. I want it all. What I know is that I need to help you be better at being able to be there for me, okay? Other strategies, when it is not safe, please, 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 please give yourself grace if you decide not to say anything. Okay? When you're a victim, I want you to give yourself grace for that. I want you to breathe. And I don't know what it is, but I sure would love some people to journal a little bit more. I ask people about journaling all the time, and they're like, I have the book, but I don't use it. Please, easy things. You can journal once a year. You can journal on a napkin, but writing it down helps it to get out of your body. Okay. So if you have been a victim and when it is not safe to respond, please take care of yourself and write it down. Call a friend, share what happened. And I want to encourage you to consider your power. We do a foundations course, and we also do a lot of other work, and we help people start to think about power, not just coercive power, but all the different kinds of power that we have. So I want you to consider that and really explore that power is more than just coercive, and that there are often ways in which we can have an impact. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are trying to be over someone else. And then I wanted to make a note about the stress cycle. So there's some great work in sort of burnout research that's letting us know that if we look at, animals and other people, if we think about grief, that when we experience a trauma in our bodies, we need to actually not try to stifle that pain, stifle that experience. We need to let ourselves work the cycle all the way out. So that might mean taking a walk, right? That might mean dancing it out. That might mean crying. That might mean screaming, but you need to let yourself have the full response. So again, when it's not safe or when you've been a victim, I want to encourage you to complete the stress cycle. And if you're interested in more than that, we do other work with groups at times. We talk just about burnout, and this is just one of those strategies. So that's a good thing to follow up on. And if you've been a witness and you're going to intervene, I'm going to invite Tony to read this and share how to use this a little bit. But the key thing here I want to say is that a powerful intervention is to separate intent from impact. Again, it's very disarming to be able to say to people, yes, I could see your intent. This is how it was felt, experienced. Tony?
When you said I could wear my clothes well for a big girl, I think your intention might have been to give me a compliment, but because of what you said, it was very harmful and it made me feel sad, bad. Can you tell me more about what you meant? Separating what they meant to say, what they thought they were saying, and the impact that they had on.
Elizabeth, would you mind sharing this adapted little piece for everybody?
Sure. So at an evening social event, we clustered in a small group, laughing, sipping beverages, and making casual conversations. One of the guests told a series of funny jokes when they turned to ask, so do you know why fill in the blank group always looks so dirty and greasy? I became uncomfortable knowing where this was going. It was going to be a racist joke, and pictured the face of a good friend of the group being demeaned. I was conflicted. You know, in my head, I'm thinking, don't be a coward, just say something, right? Break it up. But the other voice in my head said, don't be silly. It's only a joke. Don't take it so seriously. I was standing there frozen and paralyzed when one person turned to their partner and said, whoa, I'm not going there. I think I'd rather get another drink. They left for the bar and I eagerly followed along with several others.
Just giving some examples of stories. I happen to like this because I think we also need to be aware of the things that are happening in our heads, the tension that we might be experiencing. And so the intervention here, right, of just being like, oh, I don't have to stay here. And how powerful that is for everybody else as well, and to take the lead on that. So that would be an intervention, right? When we think about microaggressions, microinterventions, microaffirmations, we can interrupt or redirect, right? Whoa, let's not go there. Maybe we should focus on the task at hand. I don't know about you, but I've known some people in meetings and things start to go in a direction and we need to like redirect and even just say, okay, I'm not sure that's where we want it to go today. Maybe we need to take a breath and then try to get back to our agenda. It's also helpful to state values and set limits. I think this is an incredibly powerful statement we could all better learn to integrate, into it. I know that you respect, that respect and tolerance are important values here. And while I understand that you have the right to say what you want, I'm asking you to show a little more respect for me by not making offensive comments. And just wanting to share a few things we can all work on incorporating into things we say. Express disagreement, right? I don't agree with what you just said. That's not how I view it. We don't even have to have more of a conversation, right? Just, that's not how I view it. Great interventions, very helpful, so much better than silence. Although silence can be helpful in certain settings as well, especially when someone has said a joke that maybe is not that helpful. This is one of my favorites. Describe what's happening. Okay. Every time I come over here, I find myself uncomfortable because you make statements that I find offensive and hurtful. I don't know what's going on here. You never seem to give due consideration to my ideas, but, by the whatever on our team, right? When it's presented by this person or by this person, just being able to describe what's happening. Sometimes silence is helpful, but we need to add the nonverbal to it, actually like move away, look down, especially if someone is telling a joke or something that is not funny, that we don't kind of go along with it. These are the small interventions that we can all practice. My favorite is to say, ouch. I learned this really well. We had a group of kids who did some dinners with us, and they were sixth graders. And they shared a story about someone saying something very offensive when they were on a public bus, and they said, ouch. And the person who said something offensive stopped and looked and then got off the bus. And I love that story because it came from a sixth grader, and it's like, can we take lead from our children to know that there's ways that we can just speak and name it? And then, if you are at an organization and you have stated values and rules, we need to use them. We need to be able to say something like, in our agency, we just don't tolerate denigrating behaviors by anyone. We expect everyone to follow these rules, these principles, these guidelines, right? Something along those lines. Just some strategies. So we wanted to be sharing some tools with you today, and also where they come from. Again, I know you meant well, but that really hurts, The last one here is actually also one of my favorites because you can use it in different ways. That came out wrong. You can also use it if you have found, you said something, did something, that came out wrong. Let me try that again. And just practicing, right? That's what is going to really make a difference. Just practicing. So I encourage you to continue to look at some of these things, explore. There's great resources out there, and practicing, thinking about how we can intervene. Last few things here. Affirmations, I think we don't talk enough about, and we got to see in the role play, right? That the first one here is actively listening when someone is sharing a story. We did some work a while ago, and one of the things that was really helpful was actually learning not to say, I just can't imagine, and to say, I can only imagine. Because the implication behind I can't imagine is that you're not willing to go with what their life is like. I mean, we've been taught to use it, and it actually is not very helpful. So just actively listening, and thanking people for sharing their story. Some other things that we can do that really help is practice getting someone's name correctly. So in our virtual settings, one of the things that we often ask people to do is to help us pronounce someone's name, and just taking time to actively be able to do that, and then be willing to be corrected, right? And have the group help correct us in getting someone's name said correctly. We want you to practice in inquiring and asking stories. And in meetings, actually taking time to say to someone, I really value your opinion. I'd like to hear your side of the story. I'd like to hear your perspective here. These are great affirmations, having someone take time to ask, where are you coming from? How would you understand this? I see in chat already, someone phonetically put the name. Yes, thank you. It's so helpful. Back in the day, I used to have my name spelled phonetically as well, because people wanted to make it a D in the middle. So I'm like, it's Deetra. Yes. My other favorite here is the nod. And I just saw some nods. Thank you. How powerful is that? So when you go into different spaces, when you go into the grocery store, when we notice people just doing the nod, there's also some amazing research, especially in the African-American community, talking about the importance of the nod. And just the acknowledgement, like, I see you, you know, I see you, I see you, I see you. And not questioning that so much, you know, like making that contact. So sharing a greeting. And then wanted to give a tip in these virtual spaces, we can invite people to actually put in their screens sharing, right? Like something that is important to them. Art, we can actively, like we began this session with music, screen background, all of these things. There's so many ways that we can encourage affirmations of each other, and we can do that actively in our work. So we're getting to the last 10 minutes or so of the session. I have a couple more things to share, but if you have some questions or anything is like coming up, I would love to try to answer some of those while we're here. I just had these couple things. If you're putting that in chat, I'll go through this and then I'll check and see what we can answer in chat. So a recent, this came out this year, talking about really women across the globe and our experiences with discrimination. I think it's really helpful here, again, for what an intervention can be, especially from leaders. So I wanted to highlight this because it often gets overlooked. That as a leader, there is a way for you to be an ally. And as a leader, you can actively be curious instead of immediately decisive. Okay. So things that leaders can do better: own up to the challenges of your organization, of yourself, of the institutions. Just own up to it. We know we haven't always done it great. We're working on it, you know, and to ask for feedback related to that. Actually speak up, you know, actually name things, especially when you're in a position, again, would be like certain types of power. If you're a leader, you have a certain kind of power and people are going to look to you. So some of the more detrimental experiences we've seen have been what is described as a microaggression, which was an invalidation where someone had raised an issue on a team. Another person was not heard, like during that, raising that question, and the leader just kept going with the meeting. And that started to create erosive experience of morale in the organization. Small thing, just not being heard, right? Raising questions. If you see like, okay, it seems like this person raises a question and never gets heard. So it's really important to just pay attention to that as a leader, that you can do a whole lot more. We want to encourage you to do your own work. One of my favorite books is this one. I'm going to bring up some things that you can do related to that in just a moment. And as in true work here, you can dream together. So how will we know as an organization that we are actually being inclusive, that people are feeling validated and that there is meaningful engagement here? Asking those questions. It's also important to be genuine. My other favorite book to recommend to people is called The 4 Pivots. Tony, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, it was life-changing for me because I looked at life through lenses and the filters that I saw the world. And Genwright encourages us to turn a mirror on ourselves, to do our own work, to look within ourselves, to be able to discern what's going on in the world. And I will tell you, he's a phenomenal storyteller. His work is very important now. I think he's at Harvard now, but it is a great book. I listened to it on tape and it blew up my life. So
So we've mentioned 2 so far, right? So the 4 pivots by Sean Ginwright is really great. And then do the work, this workbook is also incredibly useful and just has tools and tips, and also, another, just all kinds of resources in there. So I definitely recommend that. I would also just say that, part of this work is actually learning how to cultivate empathy and practice having these conversations. I work with leaders all the time. And one of the things that happens is that you become a leader because you are good at getting things done. and so sometimes, like, your natural inclination, especially when you're stressed, is to just want to like move and kind of execute. So we have to set up the environment and learn how to have questions and structure our meetings so that you are creating space for empathy and compassion and connection. So we can do that by actually doing a review of our organizational policies and awareness. So many things that we can do to unpack some of that. And then my favorite that we get to eventually is digging into data. And I always recommend actually collecting both quantitative and qualitative data. That often the numbers will hide the stories. And so we need to be mindful of not just looking at what the numbers are, but also looking at what the story is behind it. Okay, so this is a great resource. They unpack a lot more of this in this report. I love, though, that they really highlight the role of curiosity and being an ally. And again, one of the strategies in the book that I mentioned, the Do the Work, is a little card that they just give you that says, do the work, and something to carry along with you. I will not just stand by. And so what can you do if you're witnessing something that's happening that's not great? You can distract by de-escalating. You can delegate. It's amazing how we can do that. Get other people involved. You can speak to what's happening, right? We've already been saying that over and over again, to be direct. You can also delay in some situations, like sometimes that's what we need. And you can document. We know that that's been powerful in our country and actually being able to make things change and move. And this is also true if you're a victim. Again, we want you to take that time, do the whole stress response, write it down, okay? So in our last few minutes here, just wanted to make some recommendations of some things that you might want to do. We do invite you. We have not been able to have an exchange here, but what we would normally do is actually take time to invite you to practice and notice and share your own stories around microaggressions, how you intervene, people who have been allies for you, taking time for that. We need more of that. We also offer a training of facilitators. If you are interested in that, we have one coming up in June. It's a great way to start unpacking dominant culture and learning how to tell your story and exploring power. I also offer direct coaching to leaders who are trying to figure out what they can do. So happy to help support that. And last few things here, we would encourage you to attend an equity dinner. And to reach out to us if you're interested in having a dinner in your community. We do those both in person and also virtually. And finally, don't go alone. We are taking registration for an equity cohort. What we've learned is that a lot of folks go to something, get a lot of good information, and then 2 months later haven't had a chance to do anything about it. So we're actually going to do a 3-month process where we're kind of all together and can support you. You pick what you're wanting to work on, and you'll have, regular contact with us to support you on that journey. So setting a goal, having something to, work through by the end in 3 months. Well, let's see. I think I saw, can we send information about the equity dinner? Yes, we can definitely do that. I hope these tips have been helpful. There's so much out there. And I think we can talk more about what the interventions can be, like just being able to notice, say ouch, share information, tell stories. I'm going to see in chat were there other things that I can address, or if you want to come off mute and ask a question. Yep, we can share videos. Let's see. Curious about the line between inquiry into others' experiences, genuine interest, and a way to accelerate empathy versus violating someone's privacy. Yeah, there must have already been an established some relationship or trust. Love that. So what we are hearing over and over and over again is that we all need to practice the skills of just connecting. Just being able to have conversation. So we sent out, when you registered for this, dialogue versus debate. So much of our culture says dialogue, says debate, meaning that they want dialogue, but we're actually not implementing the skills of dialogue. And if I didn't, one more tip, my other favorite tip that we used to do in person, sit on your hands for 2 minutes, ask a person a question, and then sit on your hands for 2 minutes and let the person just talk. It's amazing. But yes, there can be a line, and part of this is learning, is the practice. Noticing if someone doesn't really want to continue, and being able to appreciate that you might not have that relationship with them, that they're ready to share. So what I would encourage you to do is to keep coming back. Yeah. Okay. What else is in here? I do want to also just note that when we talk about microaggressions and all of the things that happen here, it takes a little bit of skill to connect, but there are things that we can do. So I look forward to being able to support you all. If you have any other questions, I just really appreciate everyone's attention, like all the way through. I know it's a lot of information. Hopefully you took some tips from this. We know that, this work we can't do alone. So we are here to support you in any way that we can, and hope that we hear from you if there's anything we can offer. We will be continuing to have sessions like this every month. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Dutra. It's always wonderful to be in the space with you. Really appreciate it.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank
As
you.
always, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thanks very much. I'm so grateful to have learned about you and the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And your team.
Yes, I couldn't do it without the team. They are the best. They are the best. Ellie, so good to see you.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
It's been too long.
I know. I was so excited this worked out. I put in the chat, do you have